I thought being a bridesmaid would mean champagne and speeches, not getting cornered in a coatroom by the groom, begging me to stop the wedding. His secret. It changed everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and my best friend. If you've ever had to choose between loyalty and truth, you're going to want to hear this. What happened next still keeps me up at night. My name is Maya, and 8 years ago I met Sophia in our college marketing class. She was this bubbly, genuine girl who always shared her notes and never made me feel bad about my thrift store clothes while she wore designer everything. Her family had money, sure, but she never acted like it mattered. We became inseparable. She was the sister I never had. Fast forward to last year. I'm 28, working as a marketing manager, living my normal life when my phone rings. It's Sophia, and she's practically screaming with excitement. Maya, I'm engaged. I found him. I found the perfect man. James seemed uncomfortable. Not shy, not nervous, but genuinely uncomfortable. Like he was watching everything happen to someone else. And when he gave his speech about finding true love in his soulmate, his eyes weren't on Sophia. They were on me. Just for a second, but I caught it and it made my stomach flip in a way I didn't want to analyze. After that night, wedding planning consumed Sophia's life. And when I say consumed, I mean it became her entire personality. Every conversation was about the venue, the flowers, the dress, the guest list. But it wasn't the excited chatter of a bride in love. It was the calculated planning of someone organizing the event of a lifetime. She name-dropped James's wealth constantly. James says money is no object. James's assistant is handling the catering. Wait until you see what James bought me for my birthday. I started to wonder when she'd stop talking about James as a person and started talking about him as a bank account. But again, I pushed those thoughts away. This was my best friend. I was probably just jealous or projecting my own relationship insecurities, right? The wedding was planned for a luxury resort in Tuscany. Yes, Tuscany. Because apparently, a regular destination wedding wasn't expensive enough. When I arrived at this place that looked like it belonged in a fairy tale, I should have been excited. Instead, I felt this growing dread in my stomach that I couldn't shake. Sophia had transformed into someone I barely recognized. She screamed at the florist because the roses weren't the exact shade of blush she'd ordered. She made a server cry because the champagne wasn't cold enough. She dismissed every suggestion I made about the ceremony details with this wave of her hand like I was some peasant who couldn't possibly understand her vision. Maya, you just don't get it, she said when I suggested maybe we didn't need diamond-encrusted napkin rings. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. James seemed uncomfortable. Not shy, not nervous, but genuinely uncomfortable. Like he was watching everything happen to someone else. And when he gave his speech about finding true love in his soulmate, his eyes weren't on Sophia. They were on me. Just for a second, but I caught it and it made my stomach flip in a way I didn't want to analyze. After that night, wedding planning consumed Sophia's life. And when I say consumed, I mean it became her entire personality. Every conversation was about the venue, the flowers, the dress, the guest list. But it wasn't the excited chatter of a bride in love. It was the calculated planning of someone organizing the event of a lifetime. She name-dropped James's wealth constantly. James says money is no object. James's assistant is handling the catering. Wait until you see what James bought me for my birthday. I started to wonder when she'd stop talking about James as a person and started talking about him as a bank account. But again, I pushed those thoughts away. This was my best friend. I was probably just jealous or projecting my own relationship insecurities, right? The wedding was planned for a luxury resort in Tuscany. Yes, Tuscany. Because apparently, a regular destination wedding wasn't expensive enough. When I arrived at this place that looked like it belonged in a fairy tale, I should have been excited. Instead, I felt this growing dread in my stomach that I couldn't shake. Sophia had transformed into someone I barely recognized. She screamed at the florist because the roses weren't the exact shade of blush she'd ordered. She made a server cry because the champagne wasn't cold enough. She dismissed every suggestion I made about the ceremony details with this wave of her hand like I was some peasant who couldn't possibly understand her vision. "Maya, you just don't get it," she said when I suggested maybe we didn't need diamond-encrusted napkin rings. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. Everything has to be perfect." The way she said it, it sounded less like a wedding and more like a performance. Meanwhile, James looked like a man walking to his execution. I'd catch him staring off into space during meetings with vendors, this haunted look in his eyes. When Sophia would grab his arm and gush about some detail, he'd smile, but it never reached his eyes. I started to feel sorry for him, which was crazy because he was a billionaire who could presumably do whatever he wanted. The bachelor and bachelorette parties were the final straw for me. Sophia rented out an entire yacht for her party. A yacht with a full staff, a personal chef, and champagne that cost more per bottle than most people make in a week. But sitting there, watching her pose for Instagram photos and talk about her perfect life, I realized she looked empty, like she was going through the motions of happiness without actually feeling it. That's when I heard the phone call that changed everything. I was looking for the bathroom when I heard Sophia's voice from the deck. She was talking to her mom, and she sounded different. Not bubbly, not excited. Just calculating. "Of course I love him, Mom. Do you see this ring? This life. I've got everything I ever wanted." There was a pause. "The prenup isn't as bad as we thought. His lawyer was sloppy. If this marriage lasts 5 years, I'm set for life." My blood ran cold. I stood there, frozen, listening to my best friend talk about her marriage like a business transaction. This wasn't love. This wasn't even close to love. This was the most elaborate gold-digging scheme I'd ever witnessed. The next day was supposed to be about final preparations, but I could barely function. I kept replaying that conversation in my head, wondering how long Sophia had been planning this. Had she ever loved James? Had she targeted him specifically because of his wealth? Was everything about our friendship a lie too? I was in the venue's coatroom, retrieving my bridesmaid dress and trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do with this information, when the door opened behind me. I turned around, expecting to see another bridesmaid or maybe venue staff. Instead, it was James. He looked terrible. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his shirt was wrinkled, and his eyes were red like he hadn't slept in days. "Maya," he said, and his voice cracked on my name. "I need to talk to someone. You're the only real person in Sophia's life. What happened next will haunt me forever." James closed the door behind him and just broke down. This billionaire, this powerful man who commanded boardrooms and made decisions that affected thousands of people, stood there looking like a lost child. "I can't do this," he whispered. "I can't marry her. But I don't know how to stop it without destroying everything." I wanted to comfort him, but I also felt this weird loyalty to Sophia pulling at me. "James, what are you talking about? You two seem happy." He laughed, but it was the most bitter sound I'd ever heard. "Happy? Maya, she doesn't love me. I know she doesn't love me. And the worst part? I don't love her either. I don't think I ever did." Then he pulled out his phone and showed me something that made my knees weak. Screenshots. Text messages between Sophia and her friends. Messages that went back months, talking about how she was reeling in the big fish. Messages about researching his assets, his properties, his business ventures. Messages where she called him boring but loaded, and joked about how easy it was to play the perfect girlfriend. "I've got him hooked," one message read. "The prenup is weak. His lawyer didn't think a sweet little marketing graduate could be a threat. 5 years and I'm set for life." I felt sick. Actually physically sick. This was my best friend. The woman I'd trusted with my deepest secrets. And she was a complete stranger. But then James said something that made everything even more complicated. "Maya, I know this is crazy and I know the timing is terrible, but I have to tell you something. This week, watching you, seeing how genuine and kind you are, seeing how you treat people with respect regardless of who they are, I think I'm falling in love with you. The room started spinning. This couldn't be happening. This was like some terrible soap opera, not my real life. My best friend was a gold digger. Her fiancé was confessing feelings for me, and I was supposed to walk down the aisle tomorrow pretending everything was normal. James, you can't say that. You're getting married tomorrow. To my best friend. Are you really going to let me marry someone who sees me as a paycheck? Are you really going to let her destroy both our lives for money? He showed me more evidence. Sophia had been lying about everything. The charity work she'd been bragging about? Fake. The volunteer work at the animal shelter? Never happened. Even her college grades, which she'd always been proud of, were inflated. She'd been crafting this perfect image to land the perfect rich husband. I should have walked away. I should have told him to figure it out himself and stayed loyal to my friend. But looking at all that evidence, seeing the pain in his eyes, I realized I wasn't protecting Sophia by staying quiet. I was enabling her to hurt someone who didn't deserve it. What do you want me to do? I asked. Help me stop this wedding. Help me expose what she really is. Because if I just call it off without proof, she'll spin it like I'm the villain. She'll take half of everything and move on to the next target. But if people see who she really is... We spent the next 2 hours planning. It felt like we were planning a heist instead of preventing a wedding. James would use the rehearsal dinner to reveal everything. He had copies of all the messages, recordings of phone calls, even evidence of the fake charity work. It would be brutal, but it would be the truth. I went to bed that night knowing I was about to lose my best friend. But I also knew I was potentially saving 2 people from a lifetime of misery. Sometimes being a good friend means making the hardest choice possible. The rehearsal dinner was held in this beautiful garden pavilion, overlooking the Tuscan countryside. Everything was perfect. The lighting, the flowers, the champagne. Sophia looked radiant in her white rehearsal dress, playing the role of the blushing bride to perfection. If I hadn't known what I knew, I would have thought she was the happiest woman alive. James was calm in a way that actually scared me. He'd gone from nervous wreck to eerily composed overnight. During dinner he was charming, making small talk with the guests, even joking with Sophia's parents. But I could see the storm brewing behind his eyes. When it came time for toasts, Sophia's father went first, welcoming James to the family and talking about how perfect they were together. Sophia's maid of honor from work gave a generic speech about love conquering all. Then it was James's turn. He stood up, that confident billionaire smile on his face, and thanked everyone for coming. Tomorrow, he said, Sophia and I will promise to love, honor, and cherish each other for the rest of our lives. Those are sacred vows based on honesty, trust, and genuine love. He paused, and I swear the entire garden went silent except for the sound of my heart pounding. But before we make those promises, I think it's important that everyone here knows exactly what kind of love we're celebrating. That's when he pulled out his phone. Sophia, darling, would you like to explain to everyone what you meant when you texted your friend Katie that you'd got me hooked? And that the prenup is weak? The color drained from Sophia's face so fast I thought she might faint. James, what are you talking about? Or maybe you'd like to explain this message to your college roommate. He's boring but loaded. 5 years and I'm set for life. Thank God rich guys are so easy to manipulate. He started reading the messages aloud word for word, in that same calm, controlled voice. The garden was dead silent except for his voice and the sound of Sophia's breathing getting faster and faster. James, stop. Stop it right now. Those messages. They're taken out of context. They're not what they seem. Really? Because here's a voice recording from last week where you told your mother, and I quote, "Of course I don't love him, but look at this ring. Look at this life. I'm not stupid enough to let this go." He played the recording. Her own voice, clear as day, admitting she was marrying him for money. That's when Sophia snapped. The perfect bride facade crumbled completely, and the real Sophia emerged. Fine. she screamed, standing up so fast her chair fell over. Fine. Yes, I'm marrying you for money. So what? You think any woman would actually fall in love with you? You're boring, James. You have no personality, no passion, nothing interesting about you except your bank account. The entire gathering gasped. Her parents looked mortified. Her bridesmaids were staring in shock. But Sophia wasn't done. And you? She whirled around to face me, her eyes blazing with rage. You self-righteous bitch. You're just jealous because no man would ever choose you over me. You've always been jealous of everything I have, everything I am. She ripped off her engagement ring and threw it at James, but her aim was terrible and it went flying into the garden. Keep your money. I'll find someone. You think he actually cares about you? You're just the rebound, the consolation prize. She stormed out of the pavilion, but not before her own mother stood up and said, Sophia Marie Henderson, I have never been so ashamed of you in my entire life. Don't you dare come home until you figure out who you really want to be. The aftermath was surreal. Guests were murmuring, some leaving, others coming up to James to apologize for what had happened. Sophia's parents actually offered to pay him back for the wedding expenses. They were so embarrassed. Her father found me later and apologized for his daughter's behavior, saying they'd had no idea who she'd become. I spent that night on my balcony, looking out at the Tuscan landscape and wondering how everything had gone so wrong so fast. I'd lost my best friend, exposed a terrible truth, and somehow gotten tangled up in a billionaire's love life. It felt like my entire world had shifted overnight. 6 months later, I was back in my normal life, focusing on work and trying to rebuild my sense of what friendship actually meant. I'd made new friends, real ones, people who valued honesty and kindness over status and money. It was a smaller circle, but it felt genuine in a way my friendship with Sophia never had. James reached out to me a few times, always to thank me for my courage. He sent flowers on my birthday with a note saying I'd saved him from the biggest mistake of his life. We never talked about his confession in the coatroom. Some things are better left in the past. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Sophia had moved to Los Angeles, trying to break into the influencer scene. Apparently, the scandal had followed her, and her family had cut her off financially. For the first time in her life, she was truly on her own. I thought I'd never see her again. Then 3 weeks ago, I walked into my local coffee shop, and there she was wearing the green apron of an employee, taking someone's order with a smile that looked almost genuine. We stared at each other for a long moment. She looked different. Humbled, maybe. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans. It's about caring enough to tell them when they're wrong, even if they hate you for it. And real love, the kind worth fighting for, can't be bought with money or status or perfect Instagram photos. It has to be earned with honesty, kindness, and genuine care for another person's well-being. I learned that day in Tuscany that I'd rather be alone with my integrity than surrounded by people who would use me, or let me use them. And honestly, I've never been happier. So that's my story about the wedding that never happened and the friendship that couldn't survive the truth. Have you ever had to choose between loyalty and doing what's right? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story kept you glued to your screen, imagine what else I have to share. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell because trust me, my life has been anything but boring. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.